Morning. I must confess I'm a little bit intimidated. I have not often been at a conference with a Nobel laureate, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Norway, and Winnie, who a rumor went about her in the UN that she was a pilot, but she just enlightened me. She's also an engineer, an aeronautical engineer. So that's very heavy-duty company. But thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about UN women and engaging men. It's a very important issue, and it's also very good to work for an executive director who sends her greetings, Madame Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, who has her roots in the anti-apartheid struggle. And she came to us with a vision from that struggle and said that apartheid would have never been abolished without a movement. And she transposes that to ending discrimination against women and girls, that this will never ever happen if we do not create a movement. And in order to create a movement, you have to talk to people who do not necessarily agree with you, for example, men. And also I'd like to tell you a personal anecdote. When I joined the former UNIFEM, the predecessor organization of UN Women 8 years ago, there was a very different atmosphere at the time. People felt really sorry for me. They thought something had gone terribly wrong with my career, that I had to raise money for a women's organization, sort of like going back from a big UN organization where I was at the time, UNFPA, to sort of like an NGO. And now things have changed. So it's good to mention that. Things have changed in the sense that people are now sort of jealous. How did you get into this? This is a really cool area. And I think the He for She campaign that started about a year ago really helped a lot. We were quite surprised by the impact that the speech of Emma Watson at the United Nations in September a year ago had. The speech went viral. And before we knew it, we had hundreds of thousands of men signing up to the He for She campaign, and it essentially went organic. I had always been an advocate for engaging men and for men to be involved, and maybe also inspired by a colleague from Iceland who said that Iceland had three export products, namely fish, geothermal energy and gender energy. And gender energy is, of course, the energy you unleash in a society when men and women are truly equal. And when you think about that, it's really true. And also men, and this is the narrative I hope to promote, have a lot to gain. Men shouldn't be involved in gender equality and women's empowerment because it makes them feel good. I remember when UN Women was established, Ted Turner was a guest speaker, and he said it made him feel good to talk about gender equality. Of course, it's a good motivation, but I think there should be more to that. I think it also makes men richer, and I believe my colleagues who speak after me will also talk about that men have a lot to gain, and that narrative have not been a lot talked about. Men have a lot to gain for their own personal family life. They become richer. They get better relations with their kids. They become better fathers if they get involved in gender equality and women's empowerment. They get better relations in their life with their partners, with their wives, and they become more fulfilled. Also easier for them after they understand the importance of the subject matter to become in unpaid care. I shouldn't forget also to pay tribute to Norway. As a leader in this struggle, as a financial leader, as a political leader, for a very long time Norway has been pushing on this issue. I also would like to mention the important work of Focus here nationally and also internationally with the other national committees for UN Women. The work of Gro Lindstad and her team in Focus has been extremely important. And we thank them. We used to joke back in the day of UNIFEM, because we were overly dependent on Norwegian resources, that when our friends in Oslo have a cold, we in UNIFEM get pneumonia. Fortunately, that is no longer the case. We have diversified the donor base a little bit more, and we have become stronger as a result. If we talk about victories of what has happened vis-à-vis the situation 20 years ago, I think one is the establishment of UN Women itself, unanimously in 2010, July, and also the political support it gained and the traction, first by the leadership of Bachelet and then by Deputy President Pumzile of South Africa. I think it's very important to realize that that would have never happened without the strong advocacy and support of Norway and the other Nordics and the UK and many others, including Canada. And also wanted to mention something recent that tickled me a lot, that Justin Trudeau was asked why half of his cabinet was female, and he had the most simple of answers. He just said 2015. So I thought that was very succinct. And many political leaders can take an example of that decision. We have a tendency nowadays in societies to reduce everything to an economical argument. Nevertheless, it comes in handy sometimes. Businesses have embraced gender equality also because it's good for the bottom line. It's smart economics. The women's empowerment principles have been embraced by companies. These are principles that have been developed with the Global Compact and are increasingly being adopted, and we of course applaud that. But the downside is that there is no other area as susceptible for lip service as gender equality and women's empowerment. Very often companies and also politicians, they think they can bring about gender equality by just talking about it. It's a little bit like the environment. You can improve the environment by talking about clean energy, or about having lunch with an old friend that you haven't seen in a long time. You just talk about having lunch. You don't have to have lunch anymore. You have talked about it. And this is something I think we have to watch out for, that we cannot be smothered by lip service. We have to really focus now, 20 years after Beijing, we have to focus on action, and we have to make sure that there's follow-up, and we also have to make sure that we explain to the general public and to all our partners as to why gender equality needs funding. It's not something, it's not a product that can be shipped, that can be warehoused and distributed. It's a mentality, it's a behavior that needs to be changed, and that requires funding, that requires money. And therefore, I'm also very pleased to share that there's no other agency in the UN that has as big a number of government donors as UN Women. We have 144 at the moment, and we aim to get 150 before the end of the year. So the wide donor base is really uplifting now. It has to get deeper, and contributions hopefully will become more substantial. We have seen that countries like China and the UAE are new donors also stepping in, and we hope that will multiply in those regions. A final word on he for she. As this is a campaign that is fully ongoing, we have started a bus tour in Europe. We will continue with that in Africa. It's called Get Free. It's sponsored by Vodafone, and very happy to share with you quite a list of CEOs of companies that have signed on. Barclays, Koch Holding, McKinsey, Schneider Electric, Tupperware, Twitter, Pricewaterhouse, Unilever, and Vodafone. So companies that have promised that they would help us roll he for she out. Also heads of state that have signed on to he for she: Finland, Iceland, Indonesia, Japan, Malawi, Romania, Rwanda, and Sweden. Quite impressive that they became champions. And also 10 universities. This initiative is called the 10 by 10 by 10 initiative. 10 universities in Georgetown University, Hong Kong, Leicester, Nagoya, Oxford, Sao Paulo, Sciences Po in Paris, Stony Brook, Waterloo, and Witwatersrand in South Africa. So we really hope that this He for She campaign will continue to grow like a snowball and will continue until the year 2030, when gender equality, according to the standalone goal, should become a fact. Of course, we need men to do that, and I would like to share the T-shirt that I got when I was in Southern Africa, and in the same period 3 years ago, with the very interesting notion that men should become agents of change, not 16 days of activism, but 365 days a year. Men as agents of change. Thank you. Then I would like to share my involvement in Southern Africa, and I hope that more initiatives like that can happen in the future, and maybe my colleagues can mention some of these initiatives in South Africa where men have become truly changed by this work. 3 years ago, we proposed as UN Women a partnership with Harley-Davidson that immediately said yes to it. Harley-Davidson Johannesburg decided to fund and sponsor a motorcycle ride amongst 9 different Southern African countries in order to reach out to men's group and get them involved in the struggle to stop violence against women. And we were extremely impressed by the swiftness by which this campaign started. We started on International Day to End Violence Against Women, the 25th of November, and moved from Johannesburg through Namibia, Botswana, Malawi, and then down Mozambique, Swaziland, Lesotho, back to Johannesburg, which is 8,000 kilometers, and reached out to many men's groups and also many representatives of the media. It was quite a visible campaign with lots of traction, and we hope that that can continue to grow. We have to make something happen. Men have to also see, other men who are feeling passionate about that, and even men you don't expect it from, like, the typical Harley-Davidson bad boy image. I have seen men who were extremely passionate for different reasons, because of their fathers, because they had a mother who was abused, because somebody just convinced them that this was the right thing to do. And I think that fire that Winnie was talking about, that is burning in people on this issue, has to continue as long as possible. Thank you very much.